What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Meaning of Podcast. I am Ace.
This is RB3.
And this is the podcast where we talk about your favorite directors and the deeper meaning within their films, or at least we hope they're your favorite directors. There's some of the top directors that we're interested in during this week. I don't know. We're figuring it out as we go, guys. But this week, we're continuing our Mexican, Latino, Hispanic theme, and we're doing Alejandro González Iñárritu, which is a very famous director, and he is pretty much considered to be one of the top guys, especially after making back-to-back with Birdman and The Revenant. Oscar-winning director, famous dude, friends with Alfonso Cuarón and Guillermo del Toro, and Emmanuel Lubezki, who's obviously a master himself and who's pretty much done every Mexican guy who's doing a film can hire this guy because he's amazing.
Yeah, I think Del Toro's worked this one, but that'd be crazy.
Del Toro's work, that would be kind of nuts, bro. Yeah. I would love to see that. Yeah. Like a Lubezki Del Toro, like weird, creepy horror film.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Sign me up, man. Sign me up. But before we do that, guys, we're going to read your comment section. But RB3, I like that shirt, man.
Hey, man. Thank you. I want to give a quick shout out to Mr. Fighting Nerdy on Instagram and on Twitter. Fighting Nerdy. He sent me the shirt. He knew I was broke. He knew I didn't have any new clothes to wear, especially in the summer weather. I usually wear a lot of long sleeves, but it's hot. It's over 100, over 115 in LA right now. So
and it's on hover 115 literally in this house right now.
Right now, yeah.
It's insane.
Hey, listen, but no, this is dope. It's this is America. It got obviously the Gambino and the image of shooting the guy,
and it's almost a classic pose now. Yeah. Everyone keeps posting that pose, like everywhere I see it. It's like always on Instagram, and people are like mimicking it and stuff. Like it's crazy how much that blew up.
Yeah, it's become a whole thing. Like it's pretty dope.
Yeah, his name is Fighting Nerdy.
Fighting Nerdy. So
gonna catch him fighting nerdy.
If you gotta catch him fighting, just fighting Nerdy on Instagram and Twitter, and support that guy, man.
Cool.
Makes dope shirts.
Let's go to the comment section from last week's episode, which was Alfonso Cuarón, like we said before. Tony Wagner. Tony's back.
Tony Wagner.
Tony's back. Every time we see you, Tony, we're going to call you out. And we're going to read your damn comment. He says, Cuarón is a master at what he does, especially Children of Men and Y Tu Mamá También, being some of the best films ever. Can't wait for Roma, which is his newest film releasing this year on Netflix. Interesting. You guys create great podcasts for airplane travel. What are your favorite films so far of 2018? That's a great question. I want to hear your thoughts on what's your favorite film so far of 2018.
2018? Well, I haven't seen like as many.
What about the film we just saw?
I know. Sorry to bother you. I don't know if that would be like my favorite, but it's definitely the one I've thought about the most out of any film that I saw. It probably would be honestly one of the top ones.
Yeah. I mean, at least top 5 of the year so far.
Definitely top 5. Yeah. It just to me, the film is a little unbalanced, but.
Sure.
For all of its unchecked like rawness, is very expressive and creative and like very, very original. You know what I mean? So it's almost like an urban Charlie Kaufman, like meets like Key and Peele, like kind of weird, strange mixture. So I appreciate it on that front. I mean, I probably still put Black Panther as my top, only because of what not because of what it represents, but it's also just a really dope movie. I mean, and from all around the board, like when you really think about what it had to say philosophically, politically, about identity, all that stuff, I think it probably has some of the strongest in that front. But then again, I haven't seen Hereditary yet, so that one I haven't seen. And I saw Tully, and Tully would honestly be like one of the top ones.
Which one's Tully?
It's one with Charlize Theron. Directed by Jason.
Oh yeah,
Reitman.
Was that good?
It was dope until the ending because it has a really bad ending.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but that would probably be up there too. But it's the ending kind of fell apart.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things too. I definitely want to rewatch Black Panther because I think the last time I saw it was in theater. And I want to buy the Blu-ray. Do you have the Blu-ray? By the way?
Yeah, the Blu-ray.
I want to borrow that real quick, bro.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would probably say Hereditary for me. Hereditary because it's a different feeling. Because if the purpose of a movie is to make you feel the most disturbed feeling ever, then you accomplished that purpose in Hereditary, and you won my vote for favorite movie of the year so far. That movie's insane. And then obviously Infinity War.
Wait, really?
Hell yeah. That movie touched my soul, man. That It made me feel butterflies. It made me feel all good inside.
Oh man, I don't know, man.
It's one of those movies, man.
I can't vibe with that.
Fernando Moreno says the Spanish pronunciation is Iñárritu. Just in case you care, keep up the great work. You guys are awesome. Saludos from Mexico. Thank you. Shout out to Mexico, as we're doing already. I've been mispronouncing his name forever. Oops, sorry. But I'll get it right this time.
Yeah, I listen. I'm not gonna say it right either way. I don't think. I have a lazy tongue, so but the Spanish names aren't that great for me. But I'm gonna try this time.
Team Money 91 says you guys are doing the Lord's work.
Oh.
Wow. Your take is always illuminating and inspires me to reevaluate the oeuvre of directors. Of directors. That's my pronunciation. Every time I see a word, I used to do this at work because I used to write like copy and scripts and stuff. And every time I would do like a foreign word, I would just go, and just add like a little accent towards it.
That's good. That's funny.
So yeah, thank you. That's a really nice comment. I told you beforehand. Comment. I was like, we're getting some nice comments, man.
Hey man, comments. Hey,
I'm used to that.
Keep sending us the nice comments, and iTunes listeners. I know you guys are doing us a great favor by listening to us on iTunes, man. We appreciate that.
One more. Let's do David Jordow says, I keep listening to you guys during work because I have some long hours. Just know as one of the fellow lovers to another. Sorry guys. I'm reading this. It's very far away and it's small, so I'm gonna increase the. I'm blind. Let's try that again. David Jordow says, I keep listening to you guys during work because I have long hours. Just know, as one fellow movie lover to another, keep up the great work. You might not get a lot of viewers all the time, but as someone who always makes videos talking about movies, it's not views that count. It's the passions you guys have doing it. Okay, but more views are great too. Thanks, man. That's really sweet. That's really nice. You know,
man.
This week inspired me. This comment section made me feel all good inside.
Hey, man. Listen. We have our supporters, and they definitely. And I love that we are able to engage in such thoughtful conversation. Because really, honestly, I feel like out of all the fan bases for the SK Plus network, I'm not throwing any shade, but I feel like we have the most elevated comment section when it comes to
you just throw shade to everyone, man.
I'm not throwing shade to him. And no, but you read. I mean, I read this other dude's comment as you read. I don't read comments, but like normally, like when I saw one dude was talking, had a whole like paragraph talking about like adaptations. I'm like, oh, what the fuck did we talk? And then we talked about that last week.
Yeah, we did.
And then just made that connection. So, yeah, thank you guys for commenting. We appreciate it.
It's really nice, guys. We appreciate it every week. You can do that. Leave us comment section. It's the best way to communicate with us. It's the best way to show us you care. Because sometimes we just don't know. Mm-hmm. We need that little boost. And you provide that, guys. And you're also very gracious and kind. And we
give
appreciate
us that little stroke of ego. That's all we need. You know what I mean?
We don't need no ego, man. We don't need where we're going. We don't need egos. Let's get into Alejandro González Iñárritu. Who is, as I said before, very famous, Oscar-winning director. He is a master, and his first film is a film that RB3 actually saw. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry, guys. It's actually the opposite this week. I think you've seen more Iñárritu films than I have.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I think maybe. I mean,
let's start with Amores Perros.
Ramona Sparrows. I did watch this one, and this is his debut feature. It's about 2 hours, 34 minutes long, and it's basically the story of. It's basically
these are not short movies, man.
I gotta say, I'm sorry, Iñárritu. I'm gonna.
You can call him Alejandro.
Alejandro, yeah, Mr. G. I gotta say,
it just keeps getting less and less.
I gotta say, man, your movies are really long, my brother. Each movie is like a good 230. You know what I mean? So pocket change. But they're all super engaging to watch, and this one's super engaging. It's the story of 3 separate kind of tales, which is a theme that occurs a lot in his first 3 motion pictures, like the kind of interconnected stories. Amos Parallels does that. 21 Grams does that, and so does Babel. This one is really, but Amos Parallels is about Mexican lifestyle and the different facets of Mexican lifestyle. Where we have one character who has his dog doing dog fights in order to like get by and marry his he wants to help his brother's wife escaped from his brother because his brother's abusive to his wife, and he wants to, and he loves his brother's wife, so he tries to start, fighting dogs, or have dogs fight each other to, get into that business to try and get some money for that. Meanwhile, it's also the story of a supermodel who is having this affair with like this magazine designer and publisher, who is also married, but then she ends up like breaking her leg in a car accident. And it all kind of revolves around like this car accident that happens in the middle of the film, and it's not in chronological order, so it's kind of like Memento in the sense that like you kind of Babel, yeah, exactly, like Babel, yeah, where you kind of have to piece together where in the timeline chronologically everything takes place.
But you love that stuff, don't you?
Yeah.
You love when directors mess with timelines.
Yeah. That's one of the. I think that's an amazing. That's more of a newer technique that I feel like directors are starting to implement. I feel like this movie and Memento, they both came out in like 2001, and I was listening to a podcast earlier that was reflecting on how those films kind of mirrored each other in the sense of like you're discovering information along with the characters discovering things as well about each other. So and this movie's very deep, man. It deals a lot with when we talk about loyalty, our relationship, because every storyline, there's also a third storyline in there too, that's also focused on loyalty and love. That's kind of the central theme throughout this entire movie, is like loyalty, right? What are we loyal to and how we're loyal to it. And one of the bigger motifs is that each character has like a dog in and of themselves, and how the relationship between human and dog is supposed to be built on loyalty. But a lot of times these people aren't being loyal to each other. You know what I mean? So
sure.
So it's very deep. It's very fast. It's really the story of. I was listening to Iñárritu do the interview about this, and he kind of said it was the story of love, death, and remorse. You know what I mean? So that's how all three of those are kind of exuded. Those each individually, but also encompasses all of that together. So
sure.
Yeah.
I'll say something real quick to anyone who's watching. I want to always make this podcast available to you guys, whether you've seen the film or not. So the purpose of the meeting of is essentially to discuss the themes and discuss the purposes and discuss what reoccurring themes and views do the directors have in each one of their films. So if you've seen one or two or none of Iñárritu's films, you can feel free to keep listening, because we want to have a broader discussion of what the movie is trying to say and what kind of stuff that we see in his earlier films, and maybe encourage you to watch these films and seek them out if you can. If you can't, it's totally fine. But yeah, I just wanted to say that real quick because it's kind of important to let everyone know. Right. And it has Gael Garcia Bernal too.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, same from Y Tu Mama Tambien. So kind of has that crossover.
And Babel.
And Babel as well. Yeah, I mean, it's just. I mean, of course, it's almost like a recurring thing in his movies to kind of have a broad spectrum in terms of, because I think what's really fascinating about this film in particular is that where we talked about Y Tu Mama Tambien, kind of exploring Mexico from like a higher class civilization. This movie kind of explores like the three different facets of Mexico City, right? Like the dog fighting life, the middle suburban life, trying to cope with like the relationship there, and then also the upper class life with the model and the magazine designer, and how those three, no matter what socioeconomic class you kind of land in, you each kind of face your own hardships, whether that is with real life violence and with gangsters and thugs, or whether that's with domestic violence at home and all that kind of stuff. So it's all very prominent and powerful, I feel like, and it tells a very universal story in and of itself. So
yeah, it's interesting because, like you said, it's a precursor to his later films, considering, I mean, especially Babel, which is a more international take on it. Right. But this is a very Mexican take on it, where it's like, you're Mexican to the core, but at the same time, you're very different people. You have different lifestyles, and you have different points of views when it comes to life in general. I think that's relevant, especially now with the World Cup. And I know a lot of people don't care about the World Cup, but I think it's fascinating, especially scrolling through Instagram and social media, to see the Mexican team and how someone in the Mexican team, like the passion and how much obsession that you are with the success of your team succeeding in the World Cup. I'm telling you guys, last week when we shot this, it was the night before the Colombia England game. I'm telling you guys, I don't understand. Like, I talked to my mom about it a lot because she's even more hardcore than I am. But I was disturbed. Like, I was hurt to the core. Like, I spent all day super depressed because we lost in the worst way possible in penalty kicks when we should have won. And it's one of those things where I'm telling myself, and I'm trying to dissect my own thought process and my own emotions by telling myself, why do I feel this way, even though I wasn't even as invested as other people who are even more invested than I am, or even the players. Like, how much worse must they feel? But it's this communal feeling, whether it's joy and pure ecstasy, or failure and pure depression of seeing a soccer team lose in a match. Like, it's so trivial if you really think about it. But at the same time, it's so important to so many countries, including Colombia, including Mexico, including European countries too. I mean, it's one of those things that I find so fascinating, that it's the most uniting front, the most uniting sport. I mean, it can tear people apart as well, but it's one of the most things that unites us. And it's crazy to see that in Mexico, because as someone who spent some time in Mexico, quite a bit of time in Mexico, I saw that. And it's one of those things that you can see that in Tu Mamá También as well, that the class of different people, but at the same time, I'm going to get into weird territory, but the biggest, in the United States, you face racism quite a bit. Like, that's the biggest thing that we face as societies, seeing each other differently. In Mexico, it's class. I'm going to quote something that I don't even know why I'm saying this, but there was a video that someone made and said something negative towards, like, people who do a certain thing. It's like, oh, if you do that, then you're just, and it's like a derogatory word for poor people. And it's like the most offensive thing you can say in Mexico.
Really?
Yeah, because it's one of those things that's something that you don't do. And it's very interesting to see, but I don't feel like even people in Mexico, it's a different kind of communal, feeling. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on with the election, with the president, with crimes that we've seen in Mexico, but it's very interesting. And I'm going off your train of thought.
That's why I was gonna say, like, Iñárritu, I was listening to an interview that he did back in 2001 when this movie came out.
Sure.
It was talking about, the interview kind of asked him, like, you're coming out, and Alfonso Cuarón just came out with Y Tu Mamá También as well, and Guillermo del Toro is busting on the scene. They kind of asked him, like, why do you think there's this new wave of Mexican directors coming in? And he kind of mentioned that the economy in Mexico is becoming more balanced than, like, the late 90s, early 2000s. So there was more revenue going into, like, theaters. People could go see more movies. And then that excited investors to allow more opportunities for Mexican filmmakers, which I think is fascinating, because when you look at all of these movies, they all are distinctly within their own culture, right? They all are distinctly within very, very Mexican, very, very of its own style, but also a lot of influence from, like, outside, like where we talked about last week how Y Tu Mamá También has a lot of, like, French New Wave influences, and this movie has a lot of American influences. It feels very, very gritty, very, neorealism in the sense, of, like, in the way that a lot of American movies have that, like, the sense of violence and gruesomeness, but in this portrayal of supposedly real, and trying to unveil that mask, but still having some heightened elements to it as well. I feel like that's a lot of what this movie kind of takes a lot from American cinema as well. So yeah, I mean, just overall, and then plus, and with this movie in particular, with its representation in Mexico City, when because you have to get permits and talk to the council to film in the city and stuff like that. And they're worried initially that, having images of thugs and violence was going to put a negative spin on the city. But Iñárritu kind of mentioned that he feels like not unveiling what was happening, but kind of demonstrating the reality there is for a lot of people within Mexico City, either on the top plateaus of society or on the bottom. So think that's very important.
Yeah, that's something that he's always talked about, being transparent and being real of what's actually going on in the world. Let's move on to his next film, which I believe is 21 Grams. Now, 21 Grams is a film that you said you've seen a while ago.
Yeah, this was a little bit ago when I saw this. This was
Sure.
actually probably my first Iñárritu film.
Nice.
Without realizing it. But this is kind of his first English speaking, for the most part, movie that deals around. It's again the same theme. You know, he calls his first trilogy of films the trilogy of death. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you know, Babel, 21 Grams, and Amos Pelos, because they all kind of focus on that central idea. Now, the title of this movie, 21 Grams, is not referring to any kind of like drugs or anything. What it's referring to is the amount that is supposedly lost when somebody dies, after they die. And what does that 21 grams account for? Is that the soul? Is that the heart? Like, where is that the person's being? You know, that's kind of the question. That's kind of the deeper question that's being asked throughout this entire story. And it focuses on, three different stories. One of them being Benicio del Toro. He just got out of jail. He just became a redevout Christian. And he's trying to pick his life back up, like after prison, but he ends up accidentally running over and killing somebody. And it's the story of him dealing with that, but it's also the story of the family of that person who got ran over. And it's also the story of Sean Penn, who is who I can't remember exactly what kind of role he plays in this movie, but it's another fully circular kind of non-linear connected story. And they all play individual pieces into the larger theme of death. Yeah.
Because he's he's critically ill.
Yeah,
Sean
that's
Penn
what it is. That's what it is. Yeah. He's ill, and he's trying to come to reason with like existing people in his life about that.
Sure.
And if he can rebuild himself like a soul almost, you know what I mean? And leave a reason for people to remember him for, you know? So I think that's kind of the whole arc that all three of them kind of going on. And it really does become the question, you know, for Benicio del Toro, it becomes like, oh, should he turn himself in for running this person over? Like, does that make him a heartless person for not, you know, for committing this crime and kind of trying to get away with it? And his wife is not encouraging it, but like, you know, he's an ex-convict. Like, and if he goes back, he's gonna be locked away for the rest of his life, you know? So it's like, where do we stand morally on that? Meanwhile, how does a family that's already broken and damaged deal with the grief of like one of their people, you know, one of their families, one of their relatives going? So it's all around, you know what I mean? Like it deals in the bigger questions around death rather than just death itself.
It's very interesting to see, you know, all these films and see how Iñárritu is obsessed with the deeper questions of life, death, existence, purpose. We see those themes in pretty much all his films. Even Revenant, even especially Birdman, because I just rewatched that one last night. That's essentially the whole purpose of the film is finding relevance and finding purpose and finding your purpose of existence itself and what's life. What is life? What is your mark on life? That scene where Emma Stone has all the toilet paper or whatever she's rolling off, and it's like this is how many humanity has, and this is the rest of eternity. Like, what is our impact on life itself, and who do we impact when we live or exist? These are enormous questions, philosophical questions, theological questions that Iñárritu is very much concerned with. It's interesting because it's one of those things that it's so deep. So Sean Penn plays a mathematician too. So it comes to the point of like, he has his purpose here on earth, but when you're faced and when you're confronted with death itself, the questions that you always kind of shrugged under the rug, as in heaven, you know, death and religion, after death. those kind of questions that scientists and, you know, logic-based people completely ignore and completely throw away start to creep up a little bit more when you're facing against death, and you don't want to imagine nothingness, because that's the worst thing that you can possibly imagine. But at the same time, most, you know, scientists and logic-based people don't, you know, accept, you know, any kind of religious inclination, whether that be life or reincarnation or whatever that may be. So it's very interesting to put Sean Penn's character in that position and to put Benicio del Toro's character in a very much, you know, coming to God kind of thing too. It's an interesting balance, but it's a difficult balance, because I feel that's super relevant to today, especially when it comes to faith intersecting with different types of people and politics too. And I feel like, in a sense, of a little bit too much. But at the same time, it's one of those things that people can throw away and kind of make laugh. Because I listen to a lot of political podcasts, and every time they bring up faith-based people, they kind of just laugh at them. And it's they kind of like, oh, these people are so dumb. And it's like, is that the best way to interact with someone who believes something that's not hurting you? Is that the same way you interact with someone who's Muslim? Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, if you don't, religious persecution has been around for thousands of years, and I don't think it's necessarily religious persecution, but when it comes to logically and scientifically trying to comprehend someone else's belief in a bigger purpose or in a bigger God or in whatever it may be, even if it's something, you know, like reincarnation or something even more foreign that's not as American as God and Christianity. It's something that I think humanity has to come together on. Otherwise, it's going to be the cause of even more wars. I mean, it's the cause of what's going on now in freaking the Middle East. I mean, that's what's causing it.
Yeah, it was fun, you know, it's you know, and you know, I think to that point, I think to the point of like where a lot of the statuses of the Middle Eastern countries are in. You know, that's an example of religious persecution in the sense that religion is actually being used to harm people. And I feel like a lot of, you know, people on the left or the right, you know, we have this idea of religion as being this way that we can involve politics somehow, and how we could, you know, how that intertwines with how you use the Bible to justify. We talked about this before in the past, how you use it to justify things that are not intended, you know, are just not factually intent, you know, like Jeff Sessions quoting the Bible to lock up children in detention.
I mean,
centers.
we did 12 Years a Slave not too long ago.
Right.
That scene with Michael Fassbender is like, yeah.
Well, Paul Dano too. I mean, he does the whole.
Paul Dano.
He sings that whole song in there, and you know, and that's just what. And you know, when people use their faith, their religion, and then you know, it could almost be said, you know, to some extent on the left too, where people use secularism as a mechanism of discrediting religion. You know, I feel like there's a lot of misunderstanding of the purpose of religion just to begin with. You know what I mean? Like, you're not supposed to use it to justify like not recycling, you know, like that's like what, like if you just think about that, it doesn't make any sense, or
it doesn't make
justify
any sense.
You know, not, you know, I don't know, it's just, I guess it's for people, it's the individual basis of belief, but I think there's just some things like you definitely can believe that climate change is real and that the environment is hurting, and also believe that I also believe, you know, in God and religion and all that stuff too.
It's incredibly complex and interesting, to say the least. I mean, I'm kind of taken aback right now to a conversation that I had with Adi Shankar on the Schmoes show.
Oh, right.
Were you there for that?
For the Casanova.
For Castlevania.
Because
Castlevania is literally all about this. Like, literally all about it. And it's one of those things where I talked to him about it, where it's when there's actual physical demons, like in the show, there's actual physical demons and shit, like attacking you. You quickly believe in the existence of like Earth and hell. But at the same time, it's very interesting how in the show, the demons aren't necessarily the villains. It's the extreme religious church people who use the appearance and the confirmation of the existence of demons as a way to further persecute the ones that they've already persecuted before the demons showed up. And it's one of those things where Adi and I talked about how it's not how religious people are persecuting people. It's how it's not how religious people are disturbed religious people. It's how a disturbed person uses religion to already confirm and his own hatred and his own ideas and his own ideologies to submit people or to throw people under the bus or to murder people, whatever it may be. It's not God, it's you. You're using this and you're using God's name as a way to persecute other people who you were already persecuted. And that's what the whole series is about, even though it's only 6 episodes. But it's incredibly interesting too, and I highly recommend you guys check it out. But it's so important and it's so relevant because I feel like that is one of the most relevant things that we're seeing currently in the news today, in the world today, and all around the world too, that let's not do this. But at the same time, that's not the same excuse. Another movie I recommend that you guys check out is Won't You Be My Neighbor? Sorry, I almost lost the title of the movie. But Won't You Be My Neighbor, I checked out 2 weeks ago. Yeah. It's the Mr. Rogers documentary, and I saw it with 2 friends of mine. And afterwards, we went out to eat, and we talked about it. And that's my biggest takeaway of the movie. And I know you haven't seen it, and I'm not really... I don't want to spoil anything, but at the same time, it's not really a spoiler. But the first thing you learn is how Mr. Rogers was a Christian and was going to be a minister, was going to be a pastor. He was going to be... he almost wanted to be a televangelist. Because he wanted to spread the good news of Christ. He wanted to spread the good news of God and what it is. And he chose children instead. And he still spread his faith. And he still spread the good news. That's what I wrote on Twitter, is that he found his own church and his own pulpit and his own audience. And it was children. And he was spreading the messages of Christ through these episodes. And people, you know what I'm saying? Like, people don't want to acknowledge that, but at the same time, that's what it is. That's you can't accept half of Mr. Rogers if you're going to fully embrace him. You have to accept that faith and how he used this faith to influence children and messages and certain themes that he did throughout the episode. And it's themes of tearing down walls and themes of standing against racism and themes of togetherness and themes of love and themes of acceptance and themes of all these are Christian themes. And other people you see what I'm saying? Like, it's one of those things that I feel like it's so important to show what people of faith can be, because a lot of times it may be someone who's extreme and who wants to persecute, but it may be someone like Mr. Rogers who just wants to show love to people and who wants to share his message of love. So I don't know. I just went on a rant again.
No. I totally agree. And I also think it's good that they portray Benicio del Toro as an ex-convict too, as somebody who has to make that decision.
That's incredibly deep. I mean, you imagine the fact that it's like it's a moral question, but to the point of it's a life question too, because it's literally throwing your life away by going to prison your whole life, and anyone you're connected to is affected by that.
And by the way, Ant-Man Wasp just came out. I want to give a big salute to the filmmakers for that, for showing ex-prisoners in a positive light, something that's important and that nobody's talking about, but that's a good thing.
And they're my favorite characters in the movie.
Yeah,
Luis is my favorite character. I love the Russian guy. T.I. is cool. They're literally my favorite characters in the movie, and I'm surprised that that movie's getting so much hate, because I tweeted something. I tweeted out that I liked it, and someone was like, "How could you like this movie?" And I'm like, ugh.
Yeah,
sorry.
You know what it is? It really is like kind of the most kind of popcorn-ish movie Marvel's put out in a while. And I mean, I think it was fun. I mean, it wasn't, I don't need like the fucking dark, heavy Infinity War again, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know why people want to see the half of the universe snapped away? Like, Jesus, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things too that I don't know what people expected, man.
It's called Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Oh, it was too many jokes. I'm like, what did you want, man?
Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yeah, like it was supposed to be a comedy. Like, I even turned to my friend right before the movie started, and I told him, this is a comedy, and I'm gonna watch this movie as a comedy, not a superhero movie. And he said, really? And I was like, yeah, it's a comedy. For me, it's a comedy. I'm embracing it as a comedy. It feels more
like a Paul Rudd thing than it does like an actual. By the way, that scene where Paul Rudd impersonates like a certain character that comes out.
Yeah, that was great.
That was probably my favorite scene of the life.
I still like. It's not really a spoiler, guys, but Luis's story in the movie was great to me.
Yeah.
That when he did Evangeline Lilly
from
the first film, and he's like, "Look at his hair, dude. I mean business." Like, I was like. Man. And when he started describing Paul Rudd's scene, he's like, "Ooh, girl, you saying some really messed up stuff, but I really want to kiss you right now, girl." And I was like, "Dude, yes." There's the only Latino character left in the MCU. That's all we got. That's literally all we got, man. Let's move on to Beautiful.
What was Babel, right?
No, Beautiful's... oh, my God. You're right, Babel. Jesus, man.
It's hot out here, people.
It's hot out here, man. It's messing with our brains.
Yeah.
We're in 200-degree weather right now.
Oh, straight up. That's not a joke, y'all.
That's not a joke. Babel is... He describes it as his most ambitious film, as his biggest film.
Yeah, widest scope,
so far as what he directed up to this point, which came out in 2006. The two big actors and the big names in this movie are Brad Pitt and Naomi Watts.
No, Kate Blanchett.
Kate Blanchett. Damn it! I'm thinking of Birdman. Sorry, guys. Naomi Watts is in Birdman. It stars them two, and it's essentially about, I want to say 5 separate stories.
This one's a little more. I mean, I know for sure there's the kids who shot the gun.
It's the kids in Morocco. It's the family. It's Brad Pitt and Kate Blanchett.
It's the Tokyo story as well.
Tokyo with Rinko Kikuchi. And it's also the Mexican one with Gal Garcia Bernal. And I think that's it. So it's 4. So those stories are the ones that we're focusing on. I rewatched this film, guys, so sorry, I don't have all the details, even though I rewatched it. It's the first thing I want to talk about when it comes to this movie is the international scope. And I saw the behind the scenes, which I highly, highly recommend. It's incredibly fascinating. The making of this movie, it's on YouTube, where Alejandro talks about how the idea essentially came from how we're all connected in the world, and we share the same air, and we're all humans, and we all have a connection to each other regardless of culture, religion, race, language is the biggest thing, right? Because the movie's called Babel. Now, RB3, as a theologian yourself,
I don't know about that,
but you know the story of the Tower of Babel, right?
Yeah.
So essentially, for those of you who don't know, which I think most of you do, it's how humanity didn't have different languages beforehand, and how they use that power, because it's a power. If everyone could speak the same language, that's powerful. To build a tower that can reach heaven. And God saw that as them trying to be above him. So he immediately gave them all different languages, and they all started speaking different languages to each other, which ruined their project. It ruined their tower, because they couldn't communicate how to build this thing, because it's such an ambitious project. And that's the title of the movie, and that's this whole thing that's going on. And Alejandro explains it to the little kid actor, Brad Pitt's kid actor in the movie. And it's pretty funny when he explains it, because it's just this little kid. He's like, why did you call it Babel? And he just goes on this giant story of God and all this stuff. And the little girl is Elle Fanning too.
Is it really?
Yeah, I didn't know that until afterwards.
I didn't know that.
But it's one of those films that is about those international things. And every time I see one of these international type films, because another one that does it it's a TV show, I know, but it's recent in my head. Sense8. Have you seen Sense8?
I haven't, no.
I saw all of Sense8 season 1. But it's one of those things that it has that same feel as.
It's about 8 different characters.
Correct.
Who are connected.
Correct.
Okay.
All around the world. And every time I see one of these movies, personally, I go to producer mode, and I immediately think, oh my God, this is a nightmare. Shooting this thing would be a nightmare. Like, that's where my head goes. Because what people don't know is that doing an international type movie where you're shooting all different stories in different areas, like Sense8 and like Babel, is so much money,
Yeah.
so hard, so difficult. You need to hire crews there
for different locations.
You need to find permits or just be allowed to shoot there. And the documentary talks about it quite a bit, especially with Tokyo, which apparently was the hardest one to shoot. And Alejandro lost his shit in the doc. He was really pissed off because the Tokyo police was the most strict out of like the Mexicans, out of the Moroccans, who were super kind and super open. And he has translators in different areas, so he speaks to a translator, and this translator speaks to the actors, and he tries to get different things across. It's so fascinating to watch that documentary. But it starts out in the Moroccan desert with these kids who are playing with this gun that was just bought from a fellow neighbor in that village. And it shows how this movie has so many themes. So many themes. Let's start with children.
Yeah.
Because there's a theme of innocence and childlike wonder that is embedded in all children all over the world, regardless of what culture or what language they speak. Every child has that same, I don't know what to call it, but blessing from God to have this childlike innocence and sense of wonder that you kind of lose, especially when you become a teenager. But it shows how from Brad Pitt's kids to the Moroccan kids to the child of the Tokyo businessman,
right,
she's becoming a teenager, becoming an adult.
Yeah, and I feel like that's, with that story, that's kind of, I think that one represents the transition from innocence to becoming more of your own and discovering yourself. So, but please continue.
The fact that how such a horrible, awful thing like shooting someone can be in the hands of someone who never had that intention, a child who doesn't want to cause harm and doesn't want to do that, but his adventurous spirit and his whatever attitude can be a negative thing, and it turns into the fact that he's shot Cate Blanchett's character,
right,
which is in the first 10 minutes of the movie, guys. So don't worry if I'm not spoiling anything.
Right.
But at the same time, it shows how it comes from that, and it ends with the shootout which ends the kid's life, the brother's life, and everything can go head on. I think the most pertinent image in this movie, in my opinion, this is the biggest takeaway that I have from it, is when in Japan, Rinko's character sees the little kid on screen, and it says, suspects caught for shooting of American tourist or something like that, and it's a child. It's almost like, really? Like, you frame him as if he's like Osama bin Laden, even though he's like a child. Like, it's very interesting the way it formats the media, and it's just one shot of that. But I don't know. What do you feel like this movie was trying to say throughout the story, especially of the two brothers and then the siblings of Brad Pitt's kids?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're all kind of individual coming to age stories, like in and of themselves, right? With the kids who are Brad Pitt's children, and they go with the maid to Mexico. That whole story, I feel like that whole adventure, that whole story is growing up with independence, right? Because there's that whole thing of people, who grew up in families of nannies and maids, how they become overly dependent, and we kind of see those kids being super dependent on her throughout this entire story. But at some point they had to. At some point they ended up growing in and of themselves. You know what I mean? And they got exposed to a lot of culture that they weren't normally exposed to. I mean, I think back to that scene when they're like spin the chicken around and the head comes off and the chicken's just running around. It's definitely something that not a lot of kids is gonna see. But
not a lot of kids growing up in the San Diego suburbs.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, but then even she has her own story of like love and like trying to find love and all that kind of stuff too. So it's fascinating how it kind of balances those sides, and how coming of age can be something different for some rich suburban white kids going to and trying to get back from the border, from Mexico to the border, across the border back to America, and also the story, also the thriving, growing, like sexual, discovery that young women go through, and how would that affect somebody who's deaf, who only has one method of communication that most people can't communicate through anyway. You know, it's kind of like the ultimate metaphor for being silenced, like not having anybody speak to anything.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So, and nobody hearing you either. So, and you not hearing anybody else. So, and I love that scene too when she's in the club, and then like it would just go back to her.
Can I say something too? Rewatching that scene, and you hear that da-da-da-da-da, and it starts playing Earth, Wind, and Fire September.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, and then she can't hear it, and I'm like, no, you can't hear one of the greatest songs of all time. I love that song.
Yeah,
like it's one of those things where it's like everyone's dancing. It's like this so cool song, and she can't hear it. That's awful.
Did you see the Taylor Swift version of it?
No.
Oh man, it's awful.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
Not doing it, man. But yeah, that club scene was funny because as soon as it started playing that, I was like, hell yeah! What kind of club is this? Playing Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yeah, in Japan, man, they playing better music than they playing out here.
And,
but yeah, no, it's just so it just and like you said with the boys and Morocco and how they have to grow from that too. And I also just love how Cate Blanchett's character kind of has a journey in and of herself, trying to be more open to allowing people to help her. And she feels like she hasn't been listened to throughout the entire, in the beginning when they're having that conversation out there at that restaurant. She feels like she's not being heard. She feels like she's not being listened to. She's being seen through. But through that process, she realizes how much I feel like her husband cares about her.
Yeah, but it's also her like learning who the people really are, because she views them in the beginning of the film almost like dirty.
Yeah, exactly.
Foreign, and it's like, you're drinking their water. Like it's
exactly.
Like, what's your problem? Like it's she views them as like a foreign, disgusting object because it's so foreign to her. And then by the end of the film, she learns that if it wasn't for these people, they're so loving and caring, like your preconceived notions of who they are so incorrect, and she quickly learns that when her life is on the line, especially with the clutch homie who was like helping them out. I forget the guy's name, but the guy who was on the bus and giving the tour.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Right.
That guy was clutch, and at the end of the movie, when Brad Pitt hands him money and says, "Here, take it." Like, that's the most common thing you can do, right? I mean, as even someone who doesn't have a lot of money would do that. It doesn't have to be a rich guy to be like, dude, you help me out, take the damn money.
Right.
But he refuses to take the money, and he leaves, and he's probably never going to see that guy again. But the fact that he knows in his head, that man saved my wife's life. And if it wasn't for him and his culture and his people, that the culture takes people in instead of shoving them out, even though they're foreign. What would happen if the roles were reversed and he was in America and his wife was shot? Would it be the same reaction? Kind of thing. It makes you think. Probably not, because the Moroccan culture is much more, wanting to help and wanting to bring people in. And when they were offering them food and water and stuff and then giving them to the tourists, and the tourists were like, nah, get away. It's like, yeah, because if you're going to stay here, we might as well embrace you and show you hospitality that you probably haven't been shown. So yeah, that's incredibly important as well. Yeah. And for me, a last thing I want to say about the children is the fact too that I saw the behind the scenes, and Iñárritu said that he wanted the two American kids to coming into Mexico to see it like childlike wonder, where they see different animals on the street, they see different people walking by, and they don't take it in as Cate Blanchett's character, as They take it in as like, ooh, this is different, this is new, this is an adventure, this is something I've never had before. And when they hang out with the little kids, they're still little kids. Like they're just, it doesn't matter what culture, what language they're from, they're still gonna play. And that's something that the translator in the documentary, the Arabic translator was saying in the movie. She's like, anywhere around the world, you throw some kids together and they're going to find a way to play, even if they can't speak the same language. They're going to find a way to play with each other because they're kids. And then she was hanging out with this little girl who was Moroccan, and she told the translator that she had a little crush on Alejandro's son. And it's one of those things where he's like a little kid too. He's like 7 or 8 throughout the shooting of the movie, but he had him while he was shooting the movie. He had his kids with him, which I think is crazy. But yeah, it's how a child doesn't see borders. A child doesn't see separation they see children like them. And they see someone that they want to play with, because that's all children want to do and learn, right? So I don't know. That's my last thing on them. The other theme I want to tackle though is how let's talk about Rinko's character a little bit more, because her journey through not only being a teenager, but being a teenager who's deaf and can't hear anything is so incredibly frustrating to her as she's maturing into her sexual desires or whatever it may be, because she sees that as something how society views her as different, as not accepting, and how she wants so desperately to break out of that, basically. And it's so frustrating, but at the same time it comes and it pairs in with the death of her mother. What do you think of? I love Rinko. She's I've talked to her about, I talked to her when Kumiko the Treasure Hunter that came out in 2014 or 2015. It's a movie that just stars her, and it's just her acting her face off. I think she's incredible. I think she's super underrated. So I love that she was in the movie. Obviously, Pacific Rim is where most people know her from, where she plays Mako. But I've loved her for years, and it's one of those things that she kind of shows, without saying much, she shows you everything she's feeling on her face.
And, of course, that great performance by her. She got nominated for an Oscar for this role in Babel. And, you can see why. Like you said, she's deaf. She's using a lot of her face for the acting. I totally agree. I mean, that's, the whole idea of being the outsider amongst your own people, amongst people who, is your same skin color, same race, same country, and all that, but you're still the outsider because of your disability. I think is something that's very prominent for a lot of people who are faced with disabilities, right? And have to feel kind of left out of society because, the societal norms aren't necessarily aligned with your conditions, So, and then she struggles with that a lot in this movie, and she somewhat kind of overly expresses how much she desires her sexuality, because that is I kind of think is her way of trying to fit in, trying to be accepted by people that's not her that's not herself and her dad, and she even starts hitting on the police officer when he's asking questions, just because she wants, and for a lot of maturing females, not for a lot, but some maturing females are interested in that kind, are interested in at least sexual relationships, so not all obviously, but but in general, people in general, like guys are too, of course. But yeah, I mean, it's just interesting that he chose to explore that with someone who's deaf, and it's a little harder for them to communicate, and express how they feel about a person or something like that. You know what I mean? So
yeah, for sure. And it's funny because this movie came out in 2006, and it talks a lot about different cultures and different borders. Let's jump to Emilia's story, the maid in the movie, or the caretaker of the children, which shows you how she's desperately trying to find a babysitter for these kids, but she can't for her son's wedding. It's her son's wedding. Like, she's not going to miss it no matter what, so she just takes him with him. And then on their way back, they run into a lot of issues, especially with Gael's character, who's awful for doing that shit. But it's essentially about border crossing, right? And how perception of people, because if the guy didn't question it, if the security guy who was at the border, if he didn't question it, they would have gone easily, right? Yeah. But it's also, how could you not? I mean, the guy was so drunk, man. Like, even someone, I was like, really, girl? Like, you can't see that this guy's so drunk? And I know he's your nephew or whatever, but come on. Yeah. But that scene in the desert is like a horror movie, and it's shot like a horror movie because it's endless nothingness and desperation of life and death. And the fact that she's with two little kids too makes it 10 times worse. And it shows you how people face that horror like all the time. And it's a different situation and a different horror, but it's still a horror. It's still a horror movie to do that sort of thing because it's, as we're experiencing now, he is no joke.
Oh, it's definitely not a joke,
It's
man.
no joke, man. And those deserts are so hot. Like they're 115, 118. The kind of weather that we were facing over the weekend is what people face when they cross that border. It's insane. So I think that's an interesting point. But I want to finish the Babel conversation essentially on guns. Because I feel like this movie had a little bit to say about guns without saying much. I don't know if you caught that, but that's what I caught. The fact that what connected a few of the stories were guns.
Yeah.
How
It was just how it connected all of them, I feel like.
all of them, right? Yeah. And it's one of those things where we see guys shoot in the air. That was one scene too. And we see how the gun that was used to do the murder by the children was the gun of the Japanese business guy.
It was given to the Moroccan.
And was given to the Moroccan guy, and that's what was used to cause this crazy, storm that happened with Cate Blanchett's character and Brad Pitt. And at the same time, it's what was used in the suicide of Renko's mom too, because she committed suicide with a gun. And it's how funny she basically created a story of her committing suicide.
Yeah,
And then when the dad jumping off, and when the dad reveals, he's like, "No, she shot herself with my gun, like with one of my guns, because he's a hunter, so he probably has more guns." So it's essentially like the presence of guns invites chaos, right? I don't know if you caught that, but I kind of feel like that's what he was saying with that too.
Right. I mean, I feel like that's what he says. And a lot of his movies, I mean, I feel like that's what was a little bit what was said in Amor Pelos as well. And I mean, for a lot of times that is what invites chaos, right? Guns are kind of put especially humans, who are flawed and damaged a little bit, it could, or who just don't know any better, like the kids in this movie. It just puts everybody in a dangerous situation. So
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Let's move on to Beautiful, which is his next film, starring
Javier
Bardem. And this one is about a guy who goes throughout life, who knows what he can experience. He can see when someone else is going to die, is essentially what it is. And the theme run throughout it is essentially the theme that's run throughout 21 Grams, where the guy is starting to realize if you can experience and if you can see the most terrifying thing for humans is death, how does your perspective change? And how do you view life differently, right? It's incredibly interesting and fascinating for that too. And it's the fact, again, of life and death and existence in this world and dealing with those giant themes that, no matter who you are anywhere around the world, we're all going to live and we're all going to die eventually. And it's some more quickly than others and some more terribly than others. But it's a fact of life. And how society and the world is so obsessed with separation, like we saw with Children of Men and with other movies that talk about the separation between people, whether it be in the Middle East or whether it be on the border with the U.S. and Mexico, or whether it be anywhere around the world, you're going to experience people and trying to tear down other people. But at the same time, life and death is still a connection that we have, and it's still something that was given to us. So yeah, I mean, again, it's Iñárritu doing huge themes. I don't know if you have any thoughts.
I haven't. Unfortunately, I haven't seen this particular film, but I do know Javier Bardem was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Leading Actor in that film. By the way, we got shout out Iñárritu for his performance direction, because almost all of his movies have. I
was going to do that with Birdman.
Oh, okay.
But you beat me to the punch, man.
All right.
Let's just do it. Let's jump to Birdman. It's Birdman or An Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance.
Yes.
Ignorance or ignorance. Yeah. Which is the full title of the movie.
It's Birdman.
I want to hear your experience watching this movie for the first time. Did you see it in theaters?
Yeah, I did see it in theaters. I saw it at the tail end of his run. And I remember walking out of that theater almost kind of furious, because I was like, "Whoa, what the fuck is this?" I was in for the ride for a lot of it. Then it just got really dark and really, because I like I said, I watched 21 Grams a long time ago, and I didn't know ignorant, him as a director. This is my first time seeing his work, and I was like, damn, that was like a really fun movie till it got really, really, really depressing. And then, but for some reason, it just stuck with me. So like and it won Best Picture and everything. So like as soon as it came on Blu-ray, I had it, and then I just watched it and watched it and watched it and watched it over again. And in the end, I ultimately just fall on really enjoying it and really appreciating what it represents as this mixture of film and cinema and with theater and with the actual drama and Broadway and all that stuff, and how it merges those two worlds together, and how the use of the full one take thing is kind of the bridge that kind of bridges that gap, right? The whole illusion of having one take resembles how plays kind of have to be done just in one experience, in one sitting. So I don't know. It's a great film to me. But
I want to tell you my experience watching the movie for the first time. I saw it by myself. I saw it during the beginning of its run, I think. No, that's not true, because it was getting attention already, and I just had to go see the movie myself. It's so funny because it wasn't necessarily how I took the movie; it's how others took the movie. I had people walk out in my theater, bro.
Wow.
People walked out. I'm so convinced, and I know I might be wrong, but I'm convinced that this is not what people were expecting when they said Michael Keaton and Birdman. Like, right. That's not what you expect. It's kind of funny. Like, this is one of the most meta movies I've ever seen. And I mean that in full capacity. And I'm going to blow your mind with how meta this is, but it's so freaking meta. It's meta to the point that even the people walking out of the theater are a representation of his comments of people who are just interested in blockbuster movies and expecting Birdman, spectacle, dumb shit, explosions, fast and crazy. And if I'm a customer and I wanted that and I didn't get that, I'm walking out of the movie. It's just ironic how meta it can get, even during my experience watching the movie. But yeah, I mean, this is what people consider to be his greatest movie, his greatest film. Would you agree with that? Iñárritu?
I don't know if this is greatest. I mean, I definitely think Babel had a scope.
Okay.
This is probably one of the most ambitious films.
Sure. And he said that too. I mean, shooting this is a nightmare. It's got to be a nightmare.
Right. Because it's, I mean, of course it's not all one take, but they probably shoot it in like 10 to 12 minute chunks a piece and then find ways to hide the cuss in it.
And you got to give props too to Lubeski again.
Yeah,
I mean, the guy is crazy. Yeah. Like, doing that stuff is insane, and that's so difficult to do.
Yeah. Very minimal lighting that kind of used a lot of natural stuff. I always think back to that scene where he's walking through the liquor store and it's all the chilies hanging down. It's just one of the most beautiful images in recent memory. But they have. I mean, it's a lot about the internal struggle of fame and how fame kind of rots at people to a certain extent. And we talked about the supermodel and Amor and Amor Prelos, and how in her story she ends up losing her leg as a result of the car accident that happens in that movie, and how her fame kind of ends up dwindling, and she watches her billboard being taken down, and as she's like in a wheelchair, and how this movie kind of has that same kind of thing too. Like, he's watching, there's that whole scene where he's talking about, Robert Downey Jr. gets to dress up in the CGI suit and make.
They call out a lot of people.
Yeah, man. They literally say names.
Michael Fassbender, Woody Harrelson. He's like, oh, he's doing the next Hunger Game movie. He's like, damn it. And it's like Jeremy Renner. It's like Jeremy Renner's an Avenger, and he's like, damn it.
So it's just funny how he's seeing how the superhero phase that he kind of started kind of ended up becoming a thing, and you talk about how meta is, how it became a thing in the real world with the Batman and with the Birdman relationship, right? And it's just super meta in that sense. I don't know, overall what it has to say as a commentary of not just superhero movies but of film and of criticism too, because it really is like how you have to smooch up to some critics or to get them to have some favorable You know what I mean? Like,
well, I talked about it last week. Remember?
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this, but I mentioned how, and it's crazy how relevant it is now, especially with Birdman. But I talked about how it's crazy how a film critic can just say, "Oh, it sucked," and all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, it totally sucks, right, guys?" And it's like you try to sound like the smart film critic from the New York Times said it sucked, so I'm gonna go into the movie expecting it to, and it's like it can destroy a movie. It can ruin a movie because a critic said their opinion, and people take that opinion as better than their opinion, right?
Right.
So it's crazy how that scene with the critic it's one of the best scenes in the movie. I think the best scene in the movie because it shows you how it's like it's so true how even Edward Norton says it. The idea of risk, and reward, the idea of acting is your risk being so transparent to an audience, whether it's in a play or whether it's on screen. It's an enormous risk, and the reward is recognition, it's fame, it's money, whatever you want to say the reward is. But it's crazy how, as a critic, this movie doesn't like critics. You can definitely say that.
Yeah, definitely not.
Or press, because it has another scene in the movie where they talk about the press. And I don't know, you remember that scene?
Yeah.
That scene's another one too.
When are you gonna do Birdman 3?
Yeah, and the fact, I almost feel like that scene with the press too is almost like they throw China under the bus, because when the Chinese guys are like, "Oh, you Birdman, yeah, I don't give a shit about anything else you're doing," like, and it's almost like, "Oh, Chinese blockbuster." That's the Chinese box office. That's what they care about, because it reaches a broader audience versus something much more potent but personable. Doesn't reach a big audience, and people don't really care. It's like how many people care about what you're doing is the theme in the movie too. But the scene with the critic, I feel like that's huge because it's so true. Especially when I mentioned it last week, how a critic can just destroy a movie by saying negative things, or can do the opposite, can just bring it up, depending on how powerful that critic is. It's incredibly fascinating in that front too. So, but essentially the movie is still about existence and how,
what's your place in the universe?
What is your place in the universe, and how does your life, does it have enough of an impact? That's the Emma Stone scene with Michael Keaton, where she's talking to him about, like, it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter what I do, no one cares about you. You know, you're just, you know, an aging actor who's trying to find relevancy. Versus Edward Norton's character, who's a up and coming actor who's kicking ass, and you know,
but he's also a rapist, you know,
a rapist and a drunk, a problematic actor on set.
Not problematic. Like, he raped somebody.
No, but I mean, like, the gin scene.
Yeah. Of course,
is the sense that he's like, what is the risk and what is the reward? What is the balance of a guy who's an incredible, amazing, best actor working in the world today, versus an insane rapist, crazy person who takes advantage of people and is insane. Like, he's just crazy. What is do you see what I'm saying? And it's a question that we're still fighting today in Hollywood, because how many great actors are also massive assholes. Abusers. You know, we're the hashtag Me Too movement was all essentially about that too. How many people in power positions who you can be like, wow, how great they are, they're in power positions, are actually abusive assholes. A lot of them, most of them, if not all of them, is what we're quickly finding out, because that's what happens, is that they realize that they can do what they want because everyone kisses up to him. Like Edward Norton's character, they all kiss up to him, so he's like, whatever, I can do what I want, kind of thing. Even manipulate the play that Michael Keaton is doing, because he begins to manipulate it and make it about him and make it about what he wants to do.
Right. No, so it just all, I just think all of it overall has a lot to say about celebrity, but also about reality too, and how you could come, how I guess they framed the whole question of existentialism through the lens of celebrityism, right? Like how our perception, how, you know, like there's the whole idea of like the postmodern baby, or the postmodernist is somebody who doesn't believe in the actual truth, but just the perception of that truth, right? Like the way you see the world is the truth, not the actual truth of the world. And I feel like that's what Birdman comes into question a lot. Like what is is the Birdman character the truth of Michael Keaton, or is that the way that people perceive his truth? You know, is that the way that people who have consumed his movies, people take pictures with him as Birdman, you know, and like referring to him as Birdman, you know what I mean? So like that's how most people see him, but is that the actual reality of his situation? You know, no. But then also yes, because he sees himself as Birdman to a certain extent. He starts flying and everything. So I don't know. You know, it's a tough question.
It's incredibly philosophical. This movie is, and it's also, I feel like that relevancy and that truth that you're talking about also plays into love quite a bit, because the play is called. It's what we say we know about love, I think is what it's called.
I think something like that.
And the whole movie, I mean, obviously, I don't know if you rewatched it, but every time they're rehearsing, they're talking about, like, what does love mean? What is actually love? Love is not doing that. Love is not doing anything crazy, because that's too much, is what Edward Norton's character says. And then at the end of the movie, the scene that keeps happening over and over again is when he finds his wife with another guy. And he starts to say, like, oh, you're never going to love me? And she's like, no, sorry. And he turns the gun on himself, and he starts to say, no one loves me, no one cares about me, and then pulls the trigger, right? But that's part of it too, is like, if someone doesn't find you, if someone doesn't love you full-heartedly, with no stipulations, just full love, what does that really mean? And is that the true relevancy? Is that the true, existence and your purpose in this world? Is to find that. To find that love, whoever or whomever it may be. That's a huge thing in the movie, and it's crazy, because that's what he's trying to do. Is he's trying to have more people love him throughout the whole film.
To the point where he literally, shoots himself on stage.
To the point where he literally shoots himself on stage, and that makes him even more famous. And it gives him the relevancy, and it gives him what he wanted, was to have that. And it's one of those things too where. I was going to talk about this later, but I got to say it now. The fact that him shooting himself and him shooting his nose off, and when Zach Galifianakis' character, who's great in this movie too, tells him that he reads the headline, and he reads it, and he starts to say, actor creates a new brand of acting called hyper-realistic acting. This movie is so meta to the point that it predicts the damn future. Leonardo DiCaprio in The Revenant. That's literally how he got it. I was just because I rewatched this movie, and I was like, oh my god, this movie is literally talking about hyper-realist acting, where you're actually doing this stuff, and where you're actually bleeding, and where you're actually eating shit and doing stuff and freezing cold instead of pretending to be freezing cold. That's The Revenant. That's literally Leonardo DiCaprio in The Revenant. And I just think it's so funny how meta this movie is, to the point that it predicts the next Oscar and the next awards and the next all this stuff that happened with The Revenant and with Alejandro Iñárritu's movie. And it's so fascinating to me personally, right? To the point that, think about it. This movie gave Michael Keaton an Oscar nomination. This movie is about Reagan Thompson, his character, I think trying to get that kind of relevancy from critics. This movie was beloved by critics. Like, it's just so meta, to the point that, like, at the awards, the person who won the best actor was not Michael Keaton, was a person who actually used that hyper-realistic acting, Eddie Redmayne. I was like, oh my god, like, I'm blowing my own mind. I'm like, wait a minute. The acting, the crazy, like, it's like, well, Michael Keaton was really good in Birdman. Yeah, but Eddie Redmayne played what's the guy's name? Stephen Hawking. And he actually, got that disease. What was it? What's it called? But what he actually physically transformed, and that's why they gave him the award. It's all like the hyper-realistic acting that he was doing in the show where he shot his nose off. That's the kind of acting that Eddie Redmayne was doing. And that's why he beat Michael Keaton. I was just like, wow, dude, this is crazy. But do you think Michael Keaton deserved it over Eddie Redmayne that year?
I think so, yeah. I mean, well, honestly, I feel like a lot of the performances in this movie did really well. Emma Stone put up a really good
She was Oscar nominated too.
Yeah. And so at Norton. But yeah, Michael Keaton, I mean, he was doing something. I mean, it depends on, the way you look at it too. playing himself. Like, is that the way?
I think the one scene that did it for me was the scene where he starts to pretend that he had an abusive father.
Oh yeah.
I was like watching that in theater. I was like, gosh, man, he really is going for the Oscar. And then he was like, I'm kidding. And I was like, oh my God, that's even better. As I'm like writing a review, I'm the critic. I'm like, as Michael Keaton described his story, and then he turns it around, give him the Oscar. Like, I'm the critic watching this. But I just think it's so crazy how meta this movie got, to the point that the perception of this movie itself was how he was talking about critics beforehand. It's just crazy. And the fact that Edward Norton's playing himself too.
Right. I mean, they say he's playing himself.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, he's not playing himself.
Yeah. I mean, if he is, I hope he's not a rapist. You know
I was gonna say. But he's supposedly like an asshole.
Yeah. Which, I mean, a lot of people are.
A lot of people are.
And I think that's why it connected with a lot of Hollywood people, because they just know I feel like a lot of people in Hollywood do kind of feel the way that, you know, Michael Keaton does, which is also another meta commentary on, you know, but you know, that, I guess, I don't know, to me, I just always found it fascinating that this movie celebrates so much like the dependency on the true art of film, and like how blockbusters are just kind of washed or whatever. But meanwhile, like it exudes its own, like it kind of flexes its own muscle by having like the whole flying scenes and making you feel like.
Well, what Birdman is saying throughout that too. Yeah. Like, do you remember his speech throughout that?
Yeah, how he feels good.
How he says it's better to feel this way because you're towering over so many people, because so many people want to feel, you know, like you scare the shit out of them. He starts to say like you make them feel scared and disturbed, and you want fast and action and explosions, and then that crazy action scene happens.
Right.
But he starts to say like that gives you dominance over people, and that gives you more power and more relevancy because more people see that and consume that. Not this boring, slow words and talking stuff is what he says in the movie.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fascinating because it's another commentary on the difference between the blockbuster and the actor who's going different paths and trying to find what is the true relevancy, a number one top movie at the box office or an Oscar. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's so many layers to this movie that I think it's amazing to that point, because it really is kind of throwing a lot of people under the bus.
Right.
Like, it throws a lot of people under the bus, and I think that's sort of unfair, but at the same time it's funny how people perceive this movie itself. Any last thing for you on Birdman?
Nah, I mean, it's just a great film.
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest thing I took away from this movie was the fact that it led into The Revenant and how people perceived The Revenant and how people perceived acting to that point. Because think about who I personally feel deserved the Oscar that year, because it's a different form of acting. Michael Fassbender and Steve Jobs. And the fact that the reason why he didn't win was because he didn't do the crazy shit that Leo did.
Right.
And he, you know, did the talky shit that Birdman himself talks about in Birdman. Like, I just think that's so crazy how literally Birdman says, oh, not that talking shit. Like, give me something more. Give me something real. Give me something crazy. That's what Leo did, and that's what Michael Fassbender lost in a way.
If you ask me, Leo should have won for Wolf of Wall Street.
Okay.
Hands down.
But do you think he should have won for The Revenant?
No.
Okay.
But I don't like The Revenant all that much, so I'm just going to reveal that.
Tell me your feelings right now, man, because we're going into The Revenant, so tell me.
I mean, it's just, to me, this is the one Iñárritu film that I can't really revisit, because it's just so long and so, like, oh, God, what are we doing? And it's drenched in so much, like, oh, here's a beautiful shot after beautiful shot.
I don't know. I think those beautiful shots are pretty beautiful.
They are beautiful, man. They're beautiful. But, you know, I could watch a nature documentary as well. That's 3 hours. But nah, I'm not gonna disrespect the movie like that. It is a very well executed. I think the whole opening thing with like the whole battle that happens is dope.
It's incredible. Like that to me, like I was gonna say, but you beat me to the punch. The battle stuff that's going on in this movie, the way he shoots the battle stuff. Emmanuel Lubezki, again doing another movie with Iñárritu. The way he shoots the battle stuff it's the best parts in the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because it's just so cool. Because all of a sudden the camera turns and he's right there, and then all of a sudden he's far away, and a guy falls out of the tree, and then It's just crazy. It's crazy.
Right,
it's so good.
No, that's probably one of the most impressive. They use mostly natural light to shoot it, so obviously the cinematography is gorgeous. And they use the new Alexa 40, Arri Alexa 65. So obviously beautiful cinematography. I just thought that
the story,
yeah, it didn't grab. I don't know. I guess I'm not interested in seeing a dude like open up a horse and like eat his stomach or whatever. But
which he actually did, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
give him the Oscar now.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to my mom about how Leo's performance in The Revenant really did change acting in a way, because it's not pretending anymore. You're just actually eating raw fish, and you're actually freezing cold, and you're actually starving yourself, and you're actually, feeling pain, and you're actually bleeding, and you're actually like that's how this movie is, basically.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of like method actors out there, and of course like Daniel Day-Lewis kind of was the guy who put that, I think, more towards Marlon Brando than Daniel Day-Lewis, but then Leonardo DiCaprio took it to a whole other extreme where you're eating like raw animal and all this kind of stuff. I don't know.
I don't know, because I feel like that personally is the biggest takeaway from the movie, is the acting. It comes to the point where it's like defining and rewarding acting, right? Because you have on one hand, you have the Michael Fassbender who's learning lines and talking and embodying this certain character, and the way Leo embodied the character was experiencing pain and experiencing, like, people joke a lot, because it's fair point, that how many lines does Leo have in this movie? Not a lot. He's mainly grunting and going, ugh. Like, I think there's an honest trailer about it. But it's so true. It's the fact that it's like he's grunting, but that's a real grunt. He's actually in lots of pain. And you just put a camera on him and you're just like, eat shit, bro. And he actually eats shit instead of pretending it's shit, kind of thing. And it's like, is that a more award-worthy performance versus someone like a Michael Fassbender who learns all the crazy, a billion lines of dialogue that he learned in Steve Jobs?
Well,
personally, I would take the Michael Fassbender one over, kicking someone in the stomach and then being like, oh, and it's like, bro, you're just kicking him in the stomach. You're just giving him he doesn't really have to act. He just feels the pain.
Right. I mean, that could be a form of act.
It's a different form of acting. Right. I want to make it very clear. I'm not criticizing that. I'm simply saying that it's two different styles of acting. It's the physical acting versus the verbal acting versus they're both characters. They're both playing different characters. They're both playing real characters, but one of them is a physical form of acting, which is acting, and another one is a much more verbal lines, dialogue form of acting.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think also too, Alejandro G. Iñárritu is very influenced by theater, and in theater a lot of times it requires more physicality, because when you're in the theater, you have to act bigger so the people in the back can see you too. So I feel like that's a lot of what is kind of incorporated into his movies, is kind of not the act bigger, but the more emphasis on the physicality to a certain extent, right? Like having a much more, giving the actor as many tools as possible giving the actors so many tools and as many tools as possible to get the kind of rawness, the unfiltered like rawness of their performance. And I think he does that in this movie, and he does that in all of his movies. I mean, I talked about the still interview of him with Amor when he talks about Amor Perlos, and he talks about how he asked one of the actresses, like, what kind of cologne does your boyfriend wear? And then she told him, and then the next day he had the character who was playing in the relationship wear that cologne, right? Just a little touch, but it adds that little tool for the actor to get more connected on a personal level. So,
and you mentioned it beforehand, and you have to give him credit for doing the kind of crazy shit to get the performance that he gets out of these actors. Because at the end of the day, you just mentioned it: Beautiful, Babel, Birdman, The Revenant.
Yeah.
All Oscar nominations.
Right.
Every single one of them. Acting nominations.
Yeah, even Amor Perlos was nominated for Best Foreign Film. So all of his movies have garnered a lot of respect.
No, but it's especially with acting is what I'm saying. Like the fact that he can get... He talked about it a bit in the Babel behind the scenes too, is the fact that he's obsessed with getting emotions and raw, crazy emotions from his actors because that's what he wants from them. And every single one of them, there's no discredit when it comes to performances that he gets from these actors for sure. I mean, you can't say that's a bad part of the Iñárritu films is the fact that he gets bad performances, because every single one has a great performance or several great performances.
Right. And now I do want to ask you though about For the Revenant, in the case that I know a couple of Native American people don't take too kindly to this movie because of its portrayal of the natives, right? And how it portrays this kind of like white man fantasization of the native people, and in some cases almost acting as like the white savior in the scene where he kind of, I guess, helps the girl, helps the native girl, like when I guess like the rest of her people are trying to do whatever to her. So it's just and how it's like that romanticization of how it's always being framed of like as natives are being framed as like these mystical beings who, all that kind of stuff. I know some people didn't take too kindly to that.
It's crazy because I feel like that's the opposite of what Leo wanted for them to feel that way. Personally, I feel like that's not what he was catering towards. But yeah, that's a very good point. I feel like, that it is a white savior movie. It absolutely 100% is a white savior movie.
And we didn't mention it last week, but a lot of people thought, one of the criticisms of Children of Men is that a lot of people perceive it as a white savior movie because it's about this white dude who comes into this organization run by Luke, who's played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, a black dude, and Julianne Moore, a woman, but it takes this white guy to kind of end up saving the day. But it's just a fascinating question, because when you're talking about people of color who are behind the camera who are making these movies, is that really the same kind of narrative, or do you think there's a different approach? I mean, especially for Iñárritu being Mexican and whereas natives and kind of the foundation of the Mexican bloodline is from the mixture of natives and Spaniards, how that kind of reflects a little bit on his ancestry as well, not directly because it's in America, but you know what I mean? Like
there is, I mean, obviously, as someone who's been in Mexico, there's a shit ton of native people. Like the entire entity of southern Mexico is native culture. I don't know. That's a great question. I guess I'm stumped for this one. I don't know. I really don't, because I feel like it's so difficult to find. It's hard to find portrayals, but at the same time, that's kind of an excuse to say that, because it's like it's not hard. You can find Native American people. You can find these people. And at the end of the day, I can counter that by saying the story was essentially about Hugh Glass, a real life story. And that was the main focus of the story.
Right, but how much of that story is real? Because that's not a lot.
A lot
of people have come to the point of like a lot of this movie is kind of fictionalized, right? Like I don't think the Hugh Glass really had a Native American half son, and it wasn't like this revenge tale. Well, it wasn't.
I think it was a revenge tale,
but it wasn't because like they killed his son. I think they just kind of left him out there for dead, or what I mean. Like, so I think there's parts of the story that are fictionalized for sure, but it seems like the parts of the natives are a little more amplified in this story, and they kind of end up, and a lot of times they end up betraying the natives and the white people in this movie. Antagonistically, which was the circumstance back then, but is that also like does it feed into the old American westerns like cowboys versus Indians kind of thing too? I mean, these are all questions that are left to be answered.
They are left to be answered, because I feel like it probably does cater towards the cowboys and Indians of old times. I think it absolutely does, for sure. I mean, obviously he tries to balance it out with the one Native American character that he runs into and helps him out.
Right.
But at the same time, I mean, even Donald Gleason, who's probably the second good guy in the movie, right?
Yeah.
He's another super white dude.
Yeah. Tom Hardy though.
Tom Hardy.
To see him.
He acts his ass off in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, he's another guy who got an Oscar nomination for this.
Yeah, and he did so well in this. He didn't show up to set for Suicide Squad. That's how we ended up with With the other homeboy was cast in there, yeah.
That's right, yeah. Who I like, Joel Kinnaman.
Joking.
I like that guy. I think he's great. But yeah, I mean that pretty much concludes The Revenant in my opinion, unless you have something else to say. I mean, obviously it deals with other things such as
religion, spiritualism.
I was going to talk about faith and how it balances that, because I feel like that's another running theme. I mean, we talked about it beforehand and how faith can have a huge hand in Iñárritu's films. And it absolutely does in this movie too. That's a huge part of the movie is faith in God and
And again, I'm not saying I hate The Revenant. Like I don't. Like I
sounds like you do, Robert.
No, I do. I don't. I just it's not a watching experience that I can experience again.
Sure.
But it does have a lot to say in a lot of fronts. And I'm not just calling it a white savior movie. I think it does have a lot of nuanced, interesting things to say about the relationship between natives and Europeans and white people, and how that interaction, and how you could kind of cross barriers from both. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like you said, there's the example of the native people who were helping. Leo's character is also the fact that Leo had to have a native son in this movie, and it's also the fact that it's different relationships that occurred throughout this.
Yeah, I don't feel like intention
Yeah.
was ever directed towards what you were saying.
Yeah,
I think that's the intention.
No.
But what ended up happening, possibly. But I feel like the intention was much more supposed to be about connection and how Leo's character can be connected to another culture because of the relationship he has with his wife, and how it's totally fine and okay to have a native wife and to have relationship with them, and instead of trying to fight them and shoot them because they're foreign and because they speak a different language, you can join them and learn about them and join their culture. And I think that's what Iñárritu was trying to do.
Right. No, absolutely.
So and obviously there's a 45-minute documentary about making this movie, because it's one of the most difficult movies ever to shoot, especially the way it was shot, because there's a shit ton of wonders in this movie.
And they only shot for like 3 hours a day, right?
Yeah,
just for the peak
because
lighting.
of the lighting, man. I'm telling you guys, like, the making of this movie is equally as fascinating as the movie itself. So I recommend you guys check that out, because you have to give credit, no matter what, for the ambitiousness of this movie, because it's incredibly ambitious, and the fact that he can almost kind of top himself from Birdman, one of the most ambitious movies ever, to The Revenant, another one of the most ambitious movies ever.
Right. And it's funny too, these movies have a lot of wonders, but when you look at something like Babel, that movie is cut, like it has so many cuts. A lot of his earlier movies are very heavily edited, to the point of like I remember particularly watching Babel, and we watched it in film school, and like literally like there are moments that are like a helicopter's landing, and it takes like 7 to 8 cuts to like get the helicopter land, And I think that's a stylistic choice. It's very purposeful, and it's very much to give you that disarrangement that like these characters are feeling. And I think that's also a key part of his filmmaking as well. He uses the techniques of filmmaking, the editing, the cinematography, all of that to enhance the viewer's perspective of getting behind the will of each individual character and how they're feeling in those moments too. So
yeah, I mean, I'll finish up by saying, to be honest, man, like just watching interviews, and I'm sure you watched a ton too, I just really feel like he's a poet. Like Iñárritu's a poet. He's an artist. I think he's a genius too, to be honest. And it's really is fascinating to hear him describe what his thought process is, because it's incredible. Like the way, like little moments and little details, an audience member might take that and say whatever, but he says 5 paragraphs of poetry. I think he is a genius, and he's one of the greatest working directors today in Hollywood. So
without a doubt.
Without a doubt. And with that, guys, we finish up our episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, leave us a comment. Let us know what your favorite Iñárritu film is. Let us know if you can correctly pronunciate his name, because I think I mispronounced it quite a few times throughout this episode. So apologies for that. We're probably going to find another director. We don't know who it's going to be, but you guys will find out soon. Hopefully, maybe for next week. Join us next week for the Meaning of Podcast. I am Ace.
This is RB3.
And we are peacing out. Peace out, guys.